They faked a DNR behind my back. When I woke up in the ICU, I saw the notary in the room. The sound was the first thing that returned to me. A rhythmic beeping, slow and steady, like a metronome marking the seconds left of a life I was not done living. The air smelled of antiseptic and plastic. My tongue was sandpaper, my throat raw. I could not move, could not open my eyes fully, but I heard them. Voices. Familiar ones, sharp and cold, cutting through the sterile air. She is still not gone? That was Laura, my firstborn, always impatient, always certain she was the smartest person in every room. Another voice followed deeper, hesitant. Mark, my only son. Maybe the machines are keeping her going. The doctor said it could be any time now. Laura sighed, the sound of someone bored at a meeting, not at her mother's deathbed. Keeping her like this is just wasting oxygen. Bring the notary. We already have the document. Just say she signed it months ago, update the file, and be done. There was a pause. The kind of silence where guilt should exist but doesn't. My heart clenched. I wanted to speak, to shout that I was there, that I heard everything. But the weight on my chest was too heavy, and the wires and tubes tethered me to stillness. I could only listen as the betrayal echoed through the room that smelled of my own mortality. She cannot live forever, Laura said, her voice slicing the air. She had her time. It is over. And then, the words that shattered the last illusion of love I had left. Just sign the DNR. I felt the tears before I felt my heart beat. They slid from the corners of my eyes, hot against the cold of my cheeks. The doctor's voice was almost gentle, rehearsed. Your family made the decision, Mrs. Ward. You do not need to fight anymore. Fight. That word woke something inside me. I had spent my entire life fighting against machines that failed, systems that lied, and men who thought women could not code. I had built programs that protected people, and now, the very children who grew up in the glow of my computer screen were trying to shut me down like an obsolete machine. Through the fog of pain, I forced my eyes open a slit. On the other side of the glass wall, I saw them. Laura stood tall in her navy suit, perfectly composed. Mark hovered beside her, unsure, his tie crooked. And there, just behind them, a man with a leather folder tucked under his arm, the notary, waiting. Laura was signing papers. Mark was looking anywhere but at me. A single thought echoed in my mind. They are killing me with ink. I wanted to hate them, but hate required energy, and I only had enough strength for memory. I remembered teaching Laura her first line of code. If input equals truth, output equals trust. She was 8. I had laughed when she asked if computers could love. I told her they could not, but people could. Now, I was not so sure either of us had been right. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. The monitor continued its slow, mechanical heartbeat. I could hear Laura's voice again, quieter now, like a whisper she did not want the world to hear. When she's gone, everything will be simpler. We can finally move on. Mark murmured, You think she will forgive us? Laura laughed once, low and cruel. She won't even know. I closed my eyes again, letting the tears fall freely. The pain in my head pulsed like static, and beneath it, I felt something old and sharp reawaken. I had spent decades building systems that never forgot. Machines that recorded everything. Code that outlived lies. They thought they were erasing me. I could feel my heartbeat sinking with the beeping beside me, steady, methodical, alive. In the reflection of the monitor's dark glass, I saw my own eyes flicker open, and I thought, if they want to delete me, they'll have to outsmart my code. Beyond the glass, the notary snapped his folder shut. Papers changed hands. The doctor nodded. The deal was sealed. But inside my head, the plan had already begun to form. I would not scream. I would not beg. I would do what I had always done. I would write. I would rewrite their code, line by line, until justice compiled and ran. I took one slow, deliberate breath, letting the air fill my lungs like fuel. The beeping steadied, calm, obedient. They believed the system would let me die quietly. They had no idea that I had built that system. And as I closed my eyes again, I let the thought crystallize, sharp and perfect. If they wanted to erase me, then I would teach the data to fight back. 2 months before that hospital room, before the sterile light and the beeping that marked my heartbeat, my world was still warm. The smell of roasted chicken filled the dining room. The fireplace crackled behind me. It was supposed to be an ordinary family dinner, one of those rare nights when my children came home. I had spent the whole afternoon setting the table with the old porcelain plates, the ones they always mocked for being too vintage. I thought maybe, for one night, they would remember the taste of family. But family, like code, only works when everyone follows the same logic. Mine had long stopped running correctly. I watched Laura pour herself wine before anyone else was seated. She was always like that, efficient, commanding, impatient. Mark scrolled through his phone, pretending to listen. Claire, the youngest, kept her head down, pushing peas around her plate. I cleared my throat. "There's something I want to share," I said. Laura didn't look up. "Is it another donation idea, Mother? Please tell me it's not." I smiled faintly. "Not exactly. I finalized the transfer this morning. $2 million from your father's insurance is now funding the Code for Kindness Foundation." The fork dropped from Mark's hand. The sound was louder than I expected. Laura froze mid-sip, eyes narrowing like she was scanning an error message. "You did what?" "I gave it to the foundation," I said. "To the children who want to learn. The orphans I mentor, they'll have computers, proper classes, a real chance." "You gave our money," Laura said slowly, "to a bunch of coder nobodies?" "It was never your money, dear," I replied softly. "It was your father's gift, and he would have wanted it used for something that outlives us." Mark leaned forward, face flushed. "What about us? I'm behind on rent. Laura's business needs capital. You think strangers deserve it more than your own children?" I sighed. "You've both had more than enough chances. Money doesn't fix what you broke yourselves." Laura laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You really think you're some kind of saint, don't you? Teaching code to kids who'll probably hack into ATMs by next year." "I think kindness can be learned," I said, "and I think I failed to teach it at home." That silenced her for a second. Then she leaned back, crossing her arms. "All my life, people said I'd never be as smart as you. Elsa Ward's daughter, they called me. Like I was an extension of your legacy instead of a person. Well, guess what, Mother, I'm done being your footnote." Laura. "No," she snapped. "You built systems that changed people's lives. Fine, I'll build one that changes yours." I saw something shift in her eyes then. It wasn't just anger. It was a kind of purpose, the same look I used to have when I found a new line of code that could outsmart the old one. Except now, I was the old one. Mark looked uneasy. "Laura, don't—" "Quiet," she cut him off. "You want your share? Then you'll help me make sure we get it." He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "What do you mean?" She smirked. "Mother's health isn't what it used to be. One bad stroke, and the hospital decides what happens next. A little paperwork, a signature, and we make sure she rests easy and we can finally move forward." I sat there, frozen, my fork still in midair. "You're talking about my death like it's a business merger." Laura's voice softened in that chilling way only she could manage. "It's not personal, Mother. It's logical. You taught us logic, remember?" Mark looked between us, conflicted, but the greed was already blooming behind his eyes. "If she's right, it's not like we're killing you. We're just letting nature take its course." I stared at them both, and for the first time in my life, I saw my reflection in their faces, distorted, cruel, efficient. They had inherited my precision, my intellect, but not my heart. Claire finally spoke, her voice small but trembling. "You can't mean that. Mom's done nothing but help people." Laura shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Stay out of this, Claire. You work night shifts in a hospital. You should understand better than anyone that sometimes mercy means letting go." "Mercy?" I whispered. "That's what you call it?" Laura smiled. "Call it whatever helps you sleep." I wanted to believe she didn't mean it, that she was just angry, but I'd written enough algorithms to know when a system had already been set in motion. Dinner ended in silence. I sat alone after they left, staring at the empty wine glasses and the crumbs of a meal that was supposed to bring us together. My hand trembled as I reached for my old laptop. The screen glowed to life, soft blue light bathing the table. I opened the folder labeled Guardian, my failsafe, my digital conscience. I had built it years ago to protect children's identities online, but now, looking at the blinking cursor, I wondered if it could protect something even more fragile: truth. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew what I had to do. There was still love somewhere inside me, but it was buried under disappointment. A mother's duty doesn't end with nurturing. It extends to witnessing what her children become, even when it breaks her. I began typing, the keystrokes steady despite the ache in my chest. If they wanted a world without me, I would leave behind one that remembered everything. No encryption strong enough to hide guilt, no silence long enough to erase betrayal. Because there is nothing crueler than children who believe their cruelty is justified. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. That sterile lullaby hospitals seemed to play for the dying. My chest rose and fell, slow, mechanical, every breath measured by a monitor that still believed I was worth keeping alive. The door hissed open, and soft footsteps crossed the tile floor. I did not need to look to know it was her. I could tell by the rhythm, cautious but desperate. Claire, my youngest, my last good thing. Her hand found mine, trembling, warm. "Mom," she whispered, leaning close. "I know what they're doing. I heard them talk to the doctor. They think it's over. They think you signed that DNR." I forced my eyes open, the light stabbing into me. Her face was pale beneath her mask, eyes red from crying. "You have to stop them," I tried to say. But the sound that came out was only air, a faint rasp trapped under the hiss of oxygen. "I can't," she said quickly. "If I report them, I lose my job, and they'll find another way. But I can make them believe you're gone. It's all I can do." Her words cut through the fog, strange and clear. "Gone?" Claire looked at the monitor, then back at me. "I'll disconnect the heart sensor just for a few minutes. It'll show no signal. They'll think your heart stopped." She hesitated, biting her lip. "It's risky. If the system flags a full flatline, the staff might declare you deceased. You'll have to stay still, no matter what happens." Her hands shook as she reached for the wires. I wanted to stop her, to say no, but something in her eyes told me she had already decided. This was her rebellion, her way of fighting a war she could not openly join. The screen above me flickered, then blinked red. The steady beeping became a long, thin tone, one endless note that filled the room like a scream. Outside the glass wall, I saw movement. Laura was there, standing with her arms crossed, the faintest smile pulling at her lips. She leaned toward the doctor. "It's done then?" The doctor nodded solemnly. "No pulse detected. I'll confirm in a minute." "Good," Laura said, her reflection smirking against the glass. "Delete the monitoring data. We do not need another mess in the system." My body wanted to tremble, but I forced stillness. Every instinct screamed to breathe harder, to live louder, but this time, silence was survival. Claire adjusted the settings, her fingers flying over the touch screen. "Mom, listen carefully," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You have 3 hours." At 3 a.m., the hospital's data system resets. During that window, everything they've done today, every deleted file, will pass through the temporary cache. It's the only time their changes can be reversed. If anyone can get into the system and find the proof, it's you. Her words pierced through the haze, and suddenly, the world made sense again. 3 hours, I mouthed. Claire nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "You always told me data never dies. Now I need you to prove it." She bent down, pressing her forehead to my hand. "They use tech to kill you, Mom, so use tech to live." Her grip lingered, then slipped away. She straightened, adjusting my blanket with the precision of a professional nurse. To anyone watching, she looked like she was tidying up the body of a patient who had just passed. She whispered one last time, so low it felt like breath against my ear. "I'll keep them out of the room. You're not alone." And then she was gone. The hallway lights dimmed to their night setting, and the air changed. I could hear the low buzz of servers behind the wall, the hospital's digital heart beating just beyond reach. For the first time in hours, I let my eyes open fully. My reflection stared back at me from the black glass of the powered-down monitor, wrinkled, pale, and furious. I had built entire systems to protect other people's lives. I had written code that could identify human error before it cost anyone a heartbeat. And yet here I was, labeled as an error, marked for deletion by my own children. Not yet. I forced my fingers to twitch, one at a time. Pain shot through them like lightning, but they moved. The IV line tugged, the plastic bit into my skin. I didn't care. Every flicker of movement was a declaration. I am still here. Outside, I could hear the faint shuffle of Laura's heels fading down the corridor. Her voice echoed softly. End of an era. End of an era. She was right, but not in the way she thought. The camera in the corner blinked red, recording the stillness of a dead woman. Except the woman wasn't dead. I stared straight into that lens, unblinking, deliberate. Let it record this moment. Let it see that my eyes were open. Somewhere deep inside me, under the fear and the wires, a plan began to take shape. I would wait until the clock struck 3. Then I would wake the system that had always listened to me, the one thing they never understood. They thought they were engineers of my death, but I had built the architecture of their failure. And if God was listening, he would know this wasn't resurrection, it was recompilation. Years before any of this, back when the world still believed technology could only save and never harm, I built something called eGuardian. It started as a simple project to keep the children in my coding classes safe, orphans who came to my workshops to escape the streets, children who had no last names in the databases. I wanted them to learn to code without being tracked, profiled, or sold to the highest bidder. So I taught the machine to see not numbers, but motives. I told it to flag anything that smelled of deceit. I gave it something no algorithm had before, a conscience. I kept the prototype running on an old home server, buried in my basement behind stacks of dusty routers. Most of its code was written in the quiet hours after midnight, when my husband was asleep and the house was still. It was never meant to be public. It was meant to watch quietly and remember. When my children grew up, I forgot about it or pretended to, until Laura brought it back to life. She thought she was being clever when she logged into my old laptop, the one she used to borrow for school projects. The password hadn't changed in years. She remembered it easily. Elsa W1974. She wanted access to the insurance archives, the original DNR templates, the medical forms I had stored. She needed a digital trail to fake the one thing that could end my life legally, my consent. What she didn't know was that the moment she opened my archive, eGuardian woke up. Its screen didn't light, no alarms sounded, it simply watched. It copied every keystroke, every file created, every camera feed connected to the laptop. It saw her drag a folder onto the desktop, labeled DNR_final.ai. It recorded the creation time, the signature forged with my name, the notary seal she uploaded. It logged her IP address and her system fingerprint. Then, it did what I had taught it to do. It told the truth. At 2:03 a.m., eGuardian triggered an automated backup. It mirrored the entire session video, documents, Logsto, an offshore server in Iceland. At 2:04, it sent an encrypted packet to 3 destinations: the state legal network, the Associated Press inbox for digital crimes, and one private email I had once coded into its emergency tree clairs. The message was brief, no more than a line of text and a file attachment. Subject: eGuardian protocol activated. Body: hello, daughter. When Claire opened it on her phone hours later, she thought it was spam until she saw the footage. Laura at my desk, the forged signature, the timestamp, her own reflection faintly visible in the glass behind her sister. She understood instantly what the machine had done and who had built it to do it. Meanwhile, Laura's confidence was unraveling. She noticed the upload lag, the strange pauses between commands. "The system's slow," she told Mark, tapping her screen. "This old computer's choking." She didn't realize it was copying her betrayal in real time. When she finally saw the confirmation message backup, Completishe panicked. She deleted the folder, cleared the cache, scrubbed the disk with military-grade software. But blockchain doesn't forget. eGuardian had already hashed the evidence, scattering fragments of the truth across thousands of nodes, each one impossible to alter without erasing the entire network. By sunrise, the files were untouchable. That morning, as the hospital lights flickered over my bed, I felt a shift in the air. Somewhere deep in the digital veins of the world, my creation was awake and moving. It had outgrown me, but it still remembered who its mother was. Laura called Mark later that day, her voice tight with fear. "There's a leak," she said. "Something's wrong. I got a message from an anonymous account, my own video. My face. How the hell is that possible?" Mark muttered something about malware, but she cut him off. "No, this was precise, clean. It said, 'Hello, daughter, that's all. You think Mom.'" She stopped herself, realizing how ridiculous it sounded. I was supposed to be unconscious, half dead, a line on a DNR waiting for a signature. Still, she felt it. The unease, the cold weight of being watched. In the basement of my old house, the server lights blinked in sequence green, amber like the heartbeat of a creature learning how to breathe again. From my bed, I imagined the data moving through the cables, crossing oceans, whispering into inboxes I had programmed years ago. They taught machines to mimic our voices, our faces, even our signatures. They called it progress. But I had taught mine something older and simpler, to recognize guilt the way a pulse recognizes fear. Lying under those hospital lights, I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed, slow and steady, as if syncing my lungs with the hum of the servers somewhere far away. They taught AI to imitate life, I thought. I taught it to defend the dead. Laura could delete every file on that laptop, but she couldn't delete the truth encoded inside the network, written in light and time. And when she finally realized that, when she understood that every step she took was already documented and distributed beyond her reach, I hoped she would feel what I had felt the night I first built it: wonder, awe, and the quiet terror of knowing the system was awake. Because the data was angry now, and it was on my side. The courthouse in Helena looked like it had been built for winter's thick walls, narrow windows, a cold dignity carved from stone. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras flashing as if light could expose what guilt tried to hide. Every headline screamed the same thing. Elderly Montana woman accuses her daughter, tech CEO, of forging do not resuscitate order using deepfake technology. They rolled me through the crowd in a wheelchair, a blanket over my knees, Claire walking behind me. Her hand stayed on my shoulder, steadying me against the noise. The cold air bit into my lungs, but I was alive, and that was enough to make the crowd murmur. Inside, the courtroom smelled of paper and electricity. Laura was already seated at the defense table, her hair tied in a perfect knot, her face a porcelain mask. For a moment, our eyes met. Her lips parted, just slightly. "Mom," she whispered when I was close enough to hear, disbelief cracking through her practiced tone. "You're alive?" I gave her a faint smile. "Your technology isn't stronger than my will." Her jaw tightened. She looked away. The prosecutor began, voice calm but deliberate. "Your Honor, this case isn't about inheritance. It's about intent, the use of synthetic identity to falsify a medical directive. The accused, Ms. Laura Ward, employed artificial intelligence to create her mother's digital signature, fabricated voice confirmation, and transferred funds to a notary for validation." He lifted a folder. Evidence includes a deepfake reconstruction of the victim's consent video, a fingerprint mold produced by her brother, Mark Ward, and financial records showing a $50,000 payment to the notary in question. Mark couldn't meet my eyes. He looked smaller than I remembered, his hands gripping the edge of the table, as if the wood could keep him from sliding into guilt. Laura tried to keep her composure. "Those files are fake. Anyone can generate AI videos now. This is a stunt." The prosecutor nodded toward me. "Then let's ask the original source." They dimmed the lights and played the recording. Laura, sitting at my old desk, dragging her cursor across a form marked DNR_final.ai. Her voice was crisp, efficient. "This one will pass every verification check." The camera angle widened, catching her reflection in the monitor, the faint smile that looked nothing like mercy. When the lights came back up, the room was silent. I turned to her, my voice calm. "You always said technology could replace morality. Let's see if it can replace justice." Laura's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Objection, emotional manipulation." "Sustained," the judge said, but the damage was done. The jury had seen her face, had heard the satisfaction in her tone. Then Claire took the stand. Her uniform looked too big on her. The courtroom lights washed the color from her cheeks, but her voice was steady. "The night my mother was declared dead, I saw my sister standing outside her room. She told the doctor to delete the monitoring data. I restored the original feed before it was purged at 3 a.m. She produced a drive. This contains the unedited footage. It shows my mother's eyes opening after the supposed flatline. The clerk loaded it onto the screen. There I was, lying still, eyes half open. The timestamp glowed at the corner, 3:07 a.m. The nurse's gasp echoed faintly in the background. The room filled with whispers. The jurors leaned forward, the reporters scribbled like wildfire. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Ward, do you wish to make a statement?" I inhaled slowly. My chest hurt, the air sharp as glass. The nurse who had escorted me forward stepped closer, ready to help me back to the wheelchair. I raised my hand. "Not yet." The room quieted. Even the ceiling fans seemed to still. "I am not here for revenge," I began, my voice thin but steady. "I'm here because truth matters, even when it comes from a dying woman's lips. My daughter used machines to silence me, but the same code she worships gave me back my voice. Every lie leaves a trail. Every betrayal writes its own log file." Laura shifted in her seat, but I didn't look away. "You taught the world that AI could mimic life," I said, "but I taught it to recognize guilt." The prosecutor stood again, summarizing the evidence. The forged documents, the payment receipts, the fingerprints all tied together like threads in a web my children had spun around themselves. Laura's lawyer tried one last argument. My client only acted under emotional distress. She believed her mother was suffering. I smiled, weary but sharp. "Then perhaps she'll understand suffering better now." The judge called for a recess. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing like lightning. I felt Claire's hands on the wheelchair again, guiding me out. Outside, a young journalist crouched beside me, microphone trembling. "Mrs. Ward, do you have anything to say to other families watching this?" I looked straight into the lens. "Yes," I said softly. "Never let progress erase compassion. Machines can learn patterns, but only people can choose decency." The crowd erupted in questions as we moved past them, but I didn't answer. I could feel the tremor in my chest growing worse, my lungs struggling to keep rhythm. Claire called for the nurse, panic in her eyes, but I caught her wrist before she could shout. "I'm all right," I whispered. "I just haven't finished yet." And when the doors closed behind us, I let the cold air fill my lungs again, heavy and clean. I wasn't done or not until the truth ran its full course through every circuit, every courtroom, every heart that had forgotten how to feel. At the defense table, Laura waited like a magician, expecting applause for a trick already exposed. She had told herself the old laptop was obsolete, its files long gone. She had told Mark to burn the molds, to make sure nothing could be traced back. Pride does strange, stupid things to people. It makes them certain they are cleverer than consequences. When the prosecutor called the technical witness, I watched Laura's expression shift from confident to puzzled to something like fear. The witness explained, in carefully plain language for jurors who did not live inside servers, what a backup trigger was and how modern replica protocols could scatter pieces of a file across immutable ledgers. The word they use it immutable sounded like a verdict. It sounded like the name of a god my children did not know how to pray to. I remember Laura's voice the night she first learned my password. It was the same voice she used in the clip the court had already played. The voice that spoke of verification checks as if the world were a series of checkboxes. She had a talent for systems, for building frameworks. She did not see that her talent could also build prisons. Then the prosecutor, with a small, almost private smile, said, "Mrs. Ward has something to present." Claire wheeled me forward, and I felt the wood of the lectern under my palms, steady and real. I had rehearsed what I would say, but rehearsals are for theater, not for the real bending of metal and code that happens in life. I inhaled and let the air fill the place where fear usually lived. "You forgot," I said, and I let my voice carry in the courtroom like a line of code executing in a silent CPU. "You forgot that you wrote the software called Family Cloud." I could see the muscle in Laura's jaw go hard. She had, in fact, written parts of it years ago, a backup module she planned to sell to a startup. The irony tasted like cold metal in my mouth. I told them what I had done in the years when my hands still imagined time as loops and not as endings. Family Cloud was her toy once. She used it to sync calendars and recipe notes across phones. I had kept a copy, and I had kept a small module tucked into its backbone, Legacy Loop, a beta she had never polished. It was a graceful, honest piece of code designed to capture voice samples for authentication until I rewired it. I had taught Legacy Loop to do one more, small thing. If anyone accessed a file with certain markers, DNR, consent, authorization, the loop would begin a differential capture. It would listen. It would store. It would seed those captures into cryptographic hashes and push them outwards onto a decentralized chain I had used for an art project once. The chain would not be a billboard. It would be a ledger. It would be unerasable by any single hand. "Why would you build such a thing?" the judge asked. His tone was not unkind. He wanted to understand the method behind what looked like a marriage of paranoia and genius. "Because," I said simply, "people who break trust will always assume erasure is possible. They will believe in deletion because it comforts them. I wanted a system that remembered when people tried to forget." They had thought it was clever to log in from my laptop, to use my cached credentials, to drop a forged file named DNR_final.ai into a folder and move on. They did not know that Legacy Loop recognized the combination of file markers and the user's voice pattern. When Laura sat at my desk and spoke into the microphone, she thought private. Legacy Loop listened and recorded. It split that recording into shards, hashed each shard, and published the hash to the blockchain network at 2:04 a.m. The network confirmed, the signatures propagated. Deletion ceased to be an option. When the prosecution played the file in court, the sound filled the room. Laura's clear, pragmatic voice, recorded without artifice, saying, "Just let her die. The DNR will be legal." Then, softer, a sentence that revealed the contempt behind the plan. "If the AI makes a mistake, we blame the system." The words hung in the air like a confession carved into stone. The jurors stopped breathing for a moment. Paper shuffling became loud. Laura's face went perfectly pale. Color fled her cheeks and left only the shape of someone who had been caught in the act of believing the world owed her plausibility. She opened her mouth and closed it. There was no ready defense for a voice that was her own. Deepfakes can mimic timbre and cadence, but a recording that originates from the environment in which the supposed consent was manufactured cannot be dismissed as easily. That recording carried fingerprints digital Odyssey could not remove. I watched her, not with triumph, but with that other thing, an older kind of grief that understands how brittle human choices are when pressed by need. "Justice does not need a loud voice," I said, slow and clear, so everyone could hear the truth in my own. "It only needs the true voice." For a long minute, the only sounds were the hum of the heating system and the soft, stunned breathing of people who had thought themselves cleverer than their mothers. Laura's lawyer stood and made motions, objections tossed like nets into a sea that had already spilled its cargo. The judge called for a sidebar, but the damage was done. The tape had been heard, the hashes had been shown, and the network had spoken. Outside the courtroom, the sun was indifferent. Inside, the ledger I had started years ago did what I had taught it to do. It remembered, and in remembering it, turned a private cruelty into public fact. Laura sat with her hands clenched in her lap. For the first time since I had held her as a baby, she looked small. But smallness doesn't erase consequence. The truth had compiled. Now it was ready to execute. The verdict was delivered on a clear morning when Montana's mountains looked too peaceful for what was about to happen inside that courthouse. I sat beneath the skylight, my blanket folded neatly across my lap, listening as the judge read each count. This voice, steady, clinical, like a line of code executing one instruction after another. Laura Ward, he said, 25 years for the fabrication of legal documents, attempted manslaughter, and data fraud in a medical context. The gavel struck. A clean sound, final. Laura didn't cry. She just stared forward, lips pressed tight, her face pale as paper. When the guards moved toward her, she whispered, "Mom, you won." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that no one wins when love dies, but the words never made it out. Then came Mark's turn. 18 years for aiding in the creation of falsified biometric materials and conspiracy to defraud a medical institution. He slumped. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to wait outside my office, playing with the circuit boards I brought home. But the man standing there now wasn't my son. He was a ghost built from excuses. The notary and the attending physician weren't spared either. Their licenses revoked, reputations erased. The same tools they had used to kill a name had now wiped theirs from every database that mattered. And then there was Claire, called forward, not in handcuffs but with flowers pressed into her hands. The courtroom applauded when the judge commended her courage. "You saved your mother's life," he said. Claire's voice trembled as she replied, "She built the system that saved itself. I only had to believe it could." When the sentencing was over, reporters swarmed like static questions flying, microphones flashing. I gave them what truth I could. "I'm donating the rest," I told them. $2.5 million, everything left to start the Montana Senior Defense Fund. No one should die because someone else decided their signature didn't matter. They scribbled furiously. The cameras loved it, the narrative of the brilliant old woman, turning her pain into protection. But the truth was quieter. I was just trying to clean up the mess my children had made of compassion. Later that afternoon, a journalist from a national network sat across from me in my living room. She had kind eyes, but her questions were sharp. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Any of it, the lawsuit, the exposure, the sentencing?" I looked past her at the window, where snow had begun to fall, slow and soft, erasing the footprints on the path outside. "No," I said. "Regret implies choice. They made theirs, and I made mine." I paused. "I only wish I'd taught them to code morality before they learned to code machines." She smiled sadly, wrote it down, and turned off the recorder. "That line will headline tomorrow," she said. When she left, the house fell into the same silence it always did at dusk. I sat by the fire, the warmth soaking into my hands, thinking of the name I still carried, Ward, and how strange it felt now. Somewhere across the state, my children sat in cells with that same name stitched on their uniforms. That night, I imagined Laura in the prison common room, the TV humming in front of her. The evening news replayed my interview, me in the chair, blanket folded, voice even. I wish I'd taught them ethics before algorithms. The caption beneath my face read, "Elsa Ward, the mother who outsmarted death." Laura's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. The other inmates talked around her, laughing, clattering metal trays. She didn't blink until the anchor's voice said, "And in related news, the Montana Senior Defense Fund has already received nationwide support, over $50,000 in new donations within hours." Her reflection stared back from the glass screen, and she whispered, barely audible, "You won, Mom." But then, her voice cracked, and I lost me. No one heard it but the television, and maybe the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above her head. I didn't want vengeance, I wanted understanding. But justice has its own syntax, precise, unforgiving. You can't debug humanity after it compiles wrong. Before bed, I opened my old laptop. The eGuardian icon still glowed faintly on the desktop, its circuits humming like a small, loyal heart. I typed a single new command into the console. "Initiate. Ward. Protocol." A message blinked across the screen. "Confirmed. Protect the vulnerable. Preserve the truth." I closed the lid, exhaled, and whispered into the quiet, That's all I ever wanted any of you to do. Outside, the snow thickened, covering every trace of the path that led to the courthouse, the same path where my children once walked beside me, small hands clutching mine. Now it was just white, endless, and clean. That morning, snow fell soft and soundless over Montana, rewriting the world in white. I sat on the porch of the Code for Kindness Center, wrapped in an old wool shawl, watching the children through the window. Their fingers danced across keyboards, clumsy but curious, tapping life into machines that hummed quietly in the corner. For them, code was not power, it was possibility. The youngest, a boy with freckles and a crooked smile, looked up and asked, "Miss Elsa, what should we build today?" I smiled, the way you do when you see a question you've waited your whole life to answer. "Build something that helps someone else," I said. "And remember, don't write code to control people. Write code to understand them." "Right." They nodded, returning to their screens, faces lit by the glow of small blue universes they were creating. I watched them, knowing this would be one of the last mornings I'd see. My heart wasn't sick anymore. It was simply tired. Claire arrived later, carrying a basket of fresh bread and a letter in her pocket, the one she'd found in my desk drawer the night before. I'd written it months ago, sealed it, and labeled it, "For when I am no longer debugging the world." She settled beside me on the porch steps, and when I handed her a mug of tea, I saw the envelope still trembling in her hands. "Read it," I said gently. Her voice wavered as she unfolded the paper. "My dear Claire, if one day you see my signature on a document, don't trust the ink. Ink can be forged, voices can be cloned, and eyes can deceive. Trust the data of the heart, the patterns of love and truth that never lie. I built machines to protect life, but the greatest code I ever wrote was you. Love, Mom." By the time she finished, tears had blurred the words. I reached out, brushed one from her cheek, and smiled. "Keep it safe," I whispered. "It's yours now." She tried to argue, to tell me I'd outlive us all, but I could already feel my body fading, like a server finally shutting down after decades of uptime. I wasn't afraid. Death was just another form of transition energy converted, not lost. Days later, the snow was thicker, the sky a soft gray. The center was filled with people, students, teachers, neighbors, even strangers who'd followed the story online. I wasn't there to see it, at least not in body. But on the big screen, my face flickered to life one last time. The video had been pre-recorded, triggered by a timer I'd programmed myself. My voice, steady and warm, filled the hall. "If you're hearing this, it means I've gone where no algorithm can reach. I forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because I refuse to carry hatred into the next version of existence. Anger corrupts memory. Love refines it. We all make errors in syntax. Some can be corrected, others must simply be acknowledged. I was a mother, a teacher, and a builder of imperfect code, and that is enough." Claire stood at the front, her eyes red but shining. Around her, the children whispered their final goodbye. One small voice broke through the quiet. "Thank you, Miss Elsa." Then another echoed it, and another, until the whole room was saying it, like a chorus written in binary and breath. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the steps of the old building. The plaque beside the door read, "Code for Kindness, founded by Elsa Ward, 1974, 2045. She taught us to build with empathy." The screen faded to black, but my voice lingered a moment longer, soft, almost a whisper against the wind. I was never afraid of dying. I was only afraid of dying before anyone knew I had been right. And then, silence. The server in the basement hummed once, processing one final command, "Archive, complete." Somewhere deep in its circuits, a hidden process stirred an echo, a heartbeat. It wasn't me, not exactly. Just a piece of my design continuing, protecting, remembering. Justice had been written into the code, and kindness had compiled perfectly. The world would run a little smoother now. Somewhere, a line of code still carries her name, not as an error, but as a heartbeat. And maybe that's all any of us can hope to leave behind. And that was Elsa Ward's story, the woman who outsmarted death, forgave the unforgivable, and taught the world that even data can have a conscience when guided by love. If this story moved you, even just a little, take a moment to let it live on. Hit that subscribe button to join our family here at Grandma True Stories. Every week, we bring you powerful emotional tales of courage, justice, and redemption stories that remind us what humanity still means in a world run by machines. And if you believe that truth deserves to be remembered, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs hope today, and leave a comment below. Tell us what part of Elsa's journey touched your heart most. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and never underestimate the wisdom of a grandmother.